The coffee was still warm in my hand when Marcus Chun walked into my office at 8:47 a.m. I remember the exact time because I'd been watching the clock, counting down the 13 minutes until our weekly strategy meeting. The steam rose from my mug in delicate spirals, catching the morning light that streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the 42nd floor. Below us, the city was waking up. Taxis honking, pedestrians rushing, the whole beautiful chaos of a Tuesday morning in downtown Seattle. "Gabriel," Marcus said, and something in his voice made me set the mug down. "We need to talk." I'd worked with Marcus for 6 years. We'd started together as junior analysts at Meridian Technologies, back when the company was just breaking into the enterprise software market. We'd pulled all-nighters together, celebrated promotions together, commiserated over rejected proposals together. I knew every inflection in his voice, every micro-expression that crossed his angular face. And right now, every signal was screaming that something was catastrophically wrong. "What's going on?" I asked, gesturing to the chair across from my desk. My office wasn't large. Senior contract specialists didn't rate the corner suites, but it was mine. The walls were covered with framed contracts I'd negotiated, each one representing millions in revenue. The Yamamoto deal, the Singapore expansion, the federal government cloud initiative. 12 years of my life, documented in legal prose and corporate letterhead. Marcus didn't sit. He stood in the doorway, one hand gripping the frame like he needed the support. Behind him, I could see Sandra from HR approaching, her heels clicking against the polished floor with the rhythm of an execution march. "I'm sorry, Gabriel," Marcus said, and his voice cracked on my name. "This isn't my call. This came from above. Way above." Sandra entered with a manila folder. They still used physical folders for terminations, some archaic corporate ritual, and a cardboard box. The box was what made it real. That universal symbol of corporate dismissal, flat-packed and ready to hold the remnants of a career. "Mr. Knight," Sandra began, her voice professionally neutral in that way HR people perfect. "We're here to discuss a separation of employment." The words hit me like physical objects. Separation. Employment. Each syllable is carefully chosen, legally vetted, emotionally sterile. "What?" I managed. "There must be some mistake." "Performance issues," Sandra continued, opening the folder with practiced efficiency. "Over the past quarter, concerns have been raised about your attention to detail, your communication with team members, and your ability to meet deadlines on critical deliverables." I felt my jaw tighten. What performance issues? I just closed the Nakamura contract last week. 18 months of negotiation, $87 million in value. I brought that home 3 weeks ahead of schedule. "There have been complaints," Sandra said, not meeting my eyes. She slid a document across my desk. "From colleagues regarding your collaborative approach." I scanned the page. It was vague, maddeningly vague. Difficulty working with team members. Resistance to feedback. Concerning patterns of independence. Nothing specific. Nothing actionable. Nothing I could defend against because there was nothing concrete to defend. "Who complained?" I asked. "Show me specifics. Show me emails. Show me documentation." "That information is confidential," Sandra replied, "for the protection of those involved." Marcus was looking at the floor now, his face flushed. I turned to him. "Marcus, you're my direct supervisor. Have I had performance issues?" He opened his mouth, closed it, then said quietly, "Gabriel, the Harrington-Wells merger is happening. There are going to be changes, redundancies. They're restructuring everything." And there it was. The real reason, slipping out despite Sandra's carefully constructed narrative. Harrington-Wells was a corporate giant, 10 times Meridian's size. The merger had been announced 6 months ago, and since then, the whole company had been holding its breath, waiting to see who would survive the consolidation. "So this is about the merger," I said, "not about performance." Sandra's expression didn't change. "Your employment is being terminated effective immediately due to performance concerns. You'll receive 4 weeks of severance pay, continuation of benefits for 60 days, and a neutral reference for future employment inquiries." 4 weeks. I'd given this company 12 years. I'd sacrificed weekends, missed my nephew's graduation, postponed my own life repeatedly for critical deadlines. 12 years, and I get 4 weeks? That's the standard severance package for your level, Sandra said. She produced more papers. These are your separation documents. You have 48 hours to review them before signing. If you sign today, we can include an additional 2 weeks of severance as a goodwill gesture. Goodwill. The word was obscene in this context. I need you to pack your personal belongings, Sandra continued. We'll escort you out. Your building access has already been deactivated. Your laptop and phone are company property and need to remain here. The laptop sat on my desk, still open to the email I'd been drafting. The phone rested beside it, its screen dark. 12 years of contacts, notes, communications. My entire professional life, locked inside devices I could no longer touch. There's a problem, I said slowly, my mind starting to work through the implications. The Technotron deal. The $520 million cloud infrastructure contract. The final signing is today at 2 p.m. Sandra glanced at Marcus. Something passed between them, concern, maybe, or calculation. That will be handled, Marcus said. By who? I asked. I'm the lead negotiator. I've been working on this for 14 months. There are 17 separate addendums, each one carefully negotiated. There are verbal commitments that aren't in writing, understandings with their chief counsel about interpretation of clauses. Do you even know about the data sovereignty requirements for their European operations? The specific language their legal team needs about AI training data. Rachel Winters will take over, Marcus said. She's been shadowing you on the contract. Rachel. She was talented, ambitious, brilliant even. But she'd only been on the Technotron deal for 6 weeks, brought in to help with the final documentation. She knew the surface, but not the depths. Not the personality dynamics. Not the fact that Technotron's CEO, Patricia Okonkwo, had a visceral distrust of corporate doublespeak and would walk away from any deal that felt like manipulation. Not the understanding I'd reached with their head of security about the encryption protocols that weren't standard but were essential for them. Rachel doesn't know about the side letter, I said. The one regarding the transition timeline for legacy systems. Patricia insisted it be separate from the main contract for board approval reasons. Without that letter properly executed and referenced, the whole deal structure collapses. Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work. So if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel. I watched Marcus's face go pale. What side letter? The one in my locked desk drawer, I said quietly. The one only I can access because it's secured with the encoding system I set up for sensitive documents. The silence that followed was profound. Sandra's professional mask cracked slightly. Marcus looked like he might be sick. You're saying the Technotron deal can't close without you, Sandra said slowly. I'm saying the Technotron deal has components that only I fully understand, I corrected. Can someone else eventually figure it out? Maybe, but not by 2 p.m. today. And Technotron has made it clear, today's deadline is firm. They have a board meeting tomorrow morning where they're announcing this partnership. If we don't deliver signed contracts by 2 p.m., they're walking. They've already told us they have a backup offer from Stratosphere Systems. Marcus pulled out his phone, his fingers shaking slightly as he typed. I need to call upstairs. This is, Gabriel, can you just give me the side letter? Help us close this deal. Am I still employed here? I asked. You're being terminated, Sandra said. But we can discuss transition assistance. Then I'm not an employee, I said. And I'm not obligated to provide transition assistance when I'm being dismissed for alleged performance issues. If my performance is so problematic, surely you don't want me involved in a $520 million deal. It was petty. I knew it was petty even as the words left my mouth. But 12 years of loyalty, dismissed with vague accusations and a cardboard box, had ignited something cold and furious in my chest. Marcus's phone rang. He looked at the screen and his face went from pale to gray. It's Jonathan Reeves, he said. Jonathan Reeves, CEO of Meridian Technologies. Marcus answered, listened for 10 seconds, then held the phone out to me. He wants to talk to you. I took the phone. Gabriel Knight. Gabriel. Jonathan's voice was tight, controlled. I'm hearing there's an issue with the Technotron contract. There's no issue with the contract, I said calmly. There's an issue with your HR department firing the lead negotiator on the morning of the final signing. This is an unfortunate timing coincidence. It's not a coincidence, Jonathan. You knew the Technotron signing was today. It's been on the company calendar for 3 weeks. Someone decided to terminate me anyway. We can bring you back as a consultant, Jonathan said quickly. Contract basis. 24 hours. Help us close this deal, and we'll make it worth your while. How much? There was a pause. $10,000. For 1 day's work. I did the math in my head. The Technotron deal would generate approximately $40 million in first-year revenue for Meridian. My commission, if I were still employed, would have been $120,000. $10,000 was insulting. No, I said. Gabriel, be reasonable. I am being reasonable. You fired me for performance issues. Stand by that decision. Let your remaining high-performers handle it. I handed the phone back to Marcus and began packing my desk. The cardboard box filled slowly. 12 years fit into surprisingly little space. Photos of my parents, both gone now. A coffee mug from the Singapore office. The glass paperweight Marcus had given me when we both made senior specialists. Small totems of a career that had just ended. Sandra was on her phone now, her voice low and urgent. Marcus stood frozen, still holding his phone like it might explode. Gabriel, he tried one more time. Please, this deal is everything. If we lose Technotron, the merger might fall apart. People will lose their jobs. Real people with families with mortgages. People like me? I asked quietly. People who gave everything to this company and got fired on a Tuesday morning with 4 weeks severance? I picked up the box. It was lighter than I expected. Sandra stepped aside to let me pass. As I walked toward the elevator, I could hear phones ringing in offices behind me. The word was spreading. The Technotron deal was in jeopardy. The elevator doors opened. I stepped inside and turned to see Marcus standing in the hallway, his face a portrait of desperation and guilt. I'm sorry, he said as the doors began to close. I really am sorry. I know, I said, and I did. Marcus was a good person caught in a bad situation. But knowing that didn't change anything. The elevator descended. 42 floors of silence. I watched the numbers tick down, each one a small distance from the life I'd known. In my pocket, my personal phone buzzed. A text from Elena Rodriguez, Technotron's chief counsel. Looking forward to this afternoon. Patricia is excited to finally get this done. See you at 2. I typed back. I won't be there. I've been terminated from Meridian. You might want to confirm they still have someone authorized to sign. The response came within seconds. What? You're our point person. Patricia specifically wanted you handling this. Call me. Now. But I was already in the lobby, already pushing through the revolving doors into the cool Seattle morning. My former workplace towered above me, glass and steel reaching toward a cloudless sky. Somewhere up there, in the executive offices, panic was setting in. Someone was realizing that institutional knowledge mattered, that relationships mattered, that you couldn't just swap out people like interchangeable parts. My phone rang. Jonathan Reeves, calling directly now. I declined the call. It rang again immediately. Declined. A text appeared. Name your price. I turned off my phone and started walking. The city flowed around me, indifferent to corporate dramas. A street musician played guitar on the corner. A mother pushed a stroller, her toddler pointing excitedly at a dog. The world continued, vast and unconcerned with $520 million deals and career implosions. I walked for hours, through Pike Place Market, where vendors called out prices for flowers and fish, along the waterfront, where ferries cut white paths across the Sound, up into Capitol Hill, where cafes spilled their customers onto sidewalks. Somewhere around 1:30 p.m., I found myself in a small park, sitting on a bench under a maple tree that was just beginning to turn gold. My phone was still off. I'd left it that way deliberately, letting the silence grow. They would be frantic now. The signing was in 30 minutes. Rachel would be desperately searching through files, trying to piece together the full scope of the deal. Elena would be calling Meridian, her patience fraying. Patricia Okonkwo would be in her office, checking her watch, her trust in Meridian beginning to crack. At 2:45 p.m., I turned my phone back on. 73 missed calls, 47 text messages, 26 voicemails. I didn't listen to any of them. Instead, I opened my email. There, at the top of my inbox, was a message from Elena Rodriguez, sent at 2:17 p.m. Gabriel, Patricia just walked out of the signing meeting. There were fundamental issues with the contract that your replacement couldn't explain. She feels Meridian isn't honoring the agreements you made. She's activating the stratosphere deal. I'm sorry this happened to you. You deserved better. I sat there for a long moment, watching the light filter through the maple leaves, making patterns on the grass. I felt strange. Not triumphant, this wasn't victory. Not satisfied, there was no satisfaction in watching something I'd built collapse. Just quiet. The kind of quiet that comes after a storm, when the world is rearranging itself and you're waiting to see what new shape it will take. My phone rang. Marcus. I answered this time. It's gone, he said without preamble. His voice was hollow. Technotron signed with Stratosphere. The deal is dead. Jonathan is in his office with the CFO and the board. The merger is in question. They're talking about layoffs. Real ones this time. I'm sorry, I said, and meant it. Not sorry for my choices, but sorry for the collateral damage. For the people who'd lose jobs. For Marcus, who'd been put in an impossible position. They want you to come back, Marcus said. Not as a consultant. Full reinstatement. Senior director level. Significant raise. Stock options. Whatever you want. When? I asked. What? When do they want me to come back? Now? Today? To fix this? Yes. If you can salvage Technotron, maybe reach out to Patricia, explain what happened. No, I said simply. Gabriel, please. I know you're angry, but this is bigger than hurt feelings. It's not about hurt feelings, I interrupted. It's about trust. This morning, Meridian told me I had performance issues, that I was a problem, that I needed to be removed. Now, because of the consequences of that decision, they want me back. That's not a company that values me. That's a company that's panicking. So you'll just let it all burn? Marcus asked, and there was anger in his voice now. Everyone who works here, who depends on their jobs, you'll sacrifice them to make a point? I didn't sacrifice anyone, I said quietly. I didn't fire a key team member on the morning of the most important deal of the year. I didn't dismiss 12 years of loyalty with a cardboard box and 4 weeks severance. Those were choices Meridian made. These are the consequences of those choices. Silence on the line. Then, softly, what are you going to do? I don't know yet, I said honestly, but I'm going to figure it out. I ended the call and sat for a while longer, thinking about beginnings and endings, about how quickly a life could pivot. This morning I'd been Gabriel Knight, Senior Contract Specialist at Meridian Technologies. Tonight I was just Gabriel Knight, unemployed and uncertain. But as I sat there in the fading afternoon light, watching the city prepare for evening, I realized something. For the first time in 12 years, I didn't have to think about Meridian's needs, Meridian's deadlines, Meridian's expectations. The space in my mind where corporate obligations had lived was suddenly, startlingly empty. And in that emptiness, possibilities began to stir. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Elena Rodriguez. Not a text, but a call. I considered letting it go to voicemail, then answered. Gabriel, she said. I just wanted to say I'm sorry about what happened. You're one of the best negotiators I've ever worked with. Professional, fair, creative. If you land somewhere new, I hope we get to work together again. Thank you, I said. That means a lot. I mean it. When Patricia heard you'd been fired, she was furious. She said anyone who'd treat someone like that isn't someone she wants to do business with. That was part of why she walked. I absorbed that information. My termination hadn't just removed a key player, it had damaged Meridian's reputation in the eyes of their biggest prospect. Elena, I said slowly, an idea forming. Hypothetically, if I were to reach out to Patricia independently, not representing Meridian, would she take my call? There was a long pause. What are you thinking? I'm thinking I know how to structure enterprise cloud deals. I know the players, the legal frameworks, the technical requirements. I'm thinking that knowledge doesn't belong to Meridian. It belongs to me. You want to go independent? Consulting? Maybe, I said. Or maybe something bigger. But first I need to know, would Patricia talk to me? She'd take your call, Elena said carefully. But Gabriel, if you're thinking about approaching Technotron as a consultant to help them with the Stratosphere deal, you need to be very careful. Non-compete clauses. Confidential information restrictions. I wouldn't touch anything proprietary to Meridian, I said. But my knowledge of best practices, industry standards, negotiation strategy, that's mine. And if a client wanted advice on how to structure a deal to protect their interests, Elena laughed, a sound of surprised delight. You magnificent bastard. They fire you and you might end up costing them even more business. They fired themselves, I corrected. I'm just finding my next chapter. We talked for another 20 minutes. Elena connected me with 2 other companies in her network, both looking for expertise in complex enterprise contracts. By the time I hung up, I had 3 meetings scheduled for the following week. The sun was setting now, painting the Seattle skyline in shades of amber and rose. I stood up from the bench, leaving the park behind. My apartment was 15 blocks away, but I decided to walk. I needed the time to think, to plan, to imagine what came next. As I walked, my phone continued to ring. Meridian, desperate and demanding. I let each call go to voicemail. Their emergency was no longer my problem. Their choices had led here. They would have to live with the consequences. At a stoplight, waiting to cross, I noticed a help wanted sign in the window of a small coffee shop. Barista needed. Flexible hours. Good tips. I smiled. Not because I was planning to make coffee for a living, but because it was a reminder that the world was full of possibilities. That endings and beginnings were often the same moment, just viewed from different angles. By the time I reached my apartment, I had the outline of a plan. Not fully formed, but taking shape. I would spend the next week networking, reaching out to the contacts I'd built over 12 years. I would set up an independent consulting practice, specializing in complex enterprise negotiations. I would be selective about clients, working only with companies that valued expertise and loyalty. And I would never again tie my worth to a single employer who could dismiss it with a manila folder and a cardboard box. Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work. So if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel. The apartment was quiet when I entered. I set the box down on the kitchen table and looked at its contents. 12 years. It seemed like it should be more. But then, maybe the most important things I'd gained from Meridian weren't in this box. They were in my mind: skills, knowledge, relationships, hard-won wisdom about how deals work and how people think. I pulled out my laptop, my personal one, not the company device they'd confiscated, and opened a blank document. At the top, I typed, Knight Consulting, Enterprise Negotiation Specialists. Then I began to write. The business plan flowed easily, built on 12 years of experience and one morning of brutal clarity about what I wanted my professional life to look like. Fair dealings, mutual respect, excellence without exploitation. Somewhere across the city, Meridian Technologies was in crisis mode. Board meetings, emergency calls, frantic attempts to salvage the unsalvageable. I imagined Jonathan Reeves in his corner office, finally understanding the cost of treating people as disposable assets. I imagined the Harrington Wells executives, questioning whether a company that could lose a $520 million deal through pure mismanagement was worth acquiring. I didn't feel joy at their predicament, but I didn't feel guilty either. They had made choices, so had I. And in the morning, I would wake up and start building something new. Something of mine. My phone buzzed one final time that evening. A text from Marcus. For what it's worth, you were right. They never should have done this to you. I hope your next chapter is everything this one wasn't. I typed back, it will be. And Marcus, when the dust settles, if you need a reference for your next move, call me. You're a good person in a bad situation. Don't stay there too long. 3 days later, I signed my first client, a healthcare technology company, impressed by my work on the Yamamoto deal years ago. 2 weeks after that, Patricia Okonkwo called me personally. Technotron wanted an independent consultant to review their Stratosphere contract before final signing. Someone they could trust. Someone who puts the client's interests first. 6 weeks after my termination, I had enough business to hire my first employee, Rachel Winters. She'd quit Meridian after watching how they treated me, after being thrown into the Technotron disaster without preparation or support. She joined Knight Consulting with enthusiasm and loyalty earned through mutual respect. Meridian Technologies limped through the merger. Harrington Wells bought them, but at a significantly reduced price. The Technotron deal became a cautionary tale in business schools. How short-term thinking destroys long-term value. How institutional knowledge matters. How treating people as disposable has consequences that extend far beyond severance packages. And me? I was rebuilding. Not just a career, but a whole approach to professional life. One where trust was earned and honored. Where expertise was valued. Where endings could transform into beginnings if you had the courage to walk through the fire and see what emerged on the other side. They fired me at 9 a.m. for performance issues. By 3 p.m., their $520 million deal had collapsed without my signature. But the real story wasn't about revenge or vindication. It was about discovering that my value didn't depend on their validation. That 12 years of experience couldn't be erased by a manila folder. That sometimes the worst day of your life is actually the first day of something better. I still pass the Meridian building sometimes. It doesn't trigger anger anymore. Just a quiet recognition of how far I've come. From that cardboard box to a consulting firm with 15 employees. From being told I had performance issues to being sought out by companies across 3 continents. The coffee shop where I'd seen the help wanted sign became my favorite spot for client meetings. Full circle, in a way. From walking past it on the worst day of my career to making deals there that dwarfed anything I'd done at Meridian. Success, I learned, isn't about never failing. It's about what you build from the wreckage. And on that Tuesday morning in September, when they handed me a box and showed me the door, they gave me something more valuable than any severance package could ever be. The freedom to discover what I was truly capable of when I worked for myself on my own terms with my own vision of what professional excellence could look like.